Story 1. Elephants can swim continuously for 6 hours a day and cover up to 25 miles. Story 2. It takes light 4.24 years to travel from Earth to our closest neighboring star, Proxima Centauri. The fastest vehicle ever built by humans, Voyager 1, travels at 10.5 miles per second. At that speed, a flight from New York to London would take 5 minutes, and it would still take almost 75,000 years to reach Proxima Centauri. Story 3. A Tyrannosaurus rex lived closer in time to modern-day humans than it did to a Stegosaurus. That always blows my mind. Story 4. A few rivers in the Appalachian Mountains are older than the Atlantic Ocean they now drain into. Story 5. Statistically, every genuine shuffle of a standard 52-card deck has likely produced an order different from every other shuffle. There are so many possible ways to arrange 52 cards that most shuffles create a unique permutation. Story 6. The clouds. Water just hanging out there in the sky? That sounds like bullshit to me. Story 7. The underwater internet cables. Story 8. Australia is wider than the moon. Approximately 4,000 kilometers compared to 3,474 kilometers. Story 9. Axolotls. I have seen them with my own eyes, and I cannot be convinced they were not created in the imagination of some genius scientist out there. Story 10. Noise cancellation feels like a bad cartoon, like Three Stooges slapstick. Sound is a waveform, so if I create the opposite waveform, it will cancel and produce silence. Sure, Professor Poindexter, and while you're at it, tell me about the time machine that takes us back to when humans rode dinosaurs. Story 11. Egypt's history is so long that the ancient Egyptians had scholars who studied their own past. Story 12. It took 4,300 lifespans before humans were able to circumnavigate Earth in a wooden ship with cloth sails. From there, it took 5 more lifespans to land on the moon. Story 13. Wombats produce cube-shaped droppings. Evolution went full Minecraft and no one questioned it. Story 14. The vast difference between a million and a billion. A million seconds is about 11.5 days. A billion seconds is nearly 32 years. Story 15. A smartphone. Go back 500 years and tell someone that a single device made of metal, glass, plastic, and minerals, molded into a small brick, can communicate with other people, provide vast entertainment, give access to virtually all human knowledge, order food and alcohol to your door, summon a vehicle to pick you up and take you places, send and receive money, turn lights on and off, be used for gambling, and essentially manage almost every aspect of your life. Story 16. My 20th century reptilian brain can still barely comprehend wireless charging and the internet. Story 17. Big cats often pretend to be startled when their young surprise them in order to build the young's confidence. Story 18. Morocco was the first country to recognize the independence of the United States and is our oldest ally. Morocco fought against the South during the Civil War. One of the first treaties of the United States was in Arabic. Story 19. Every person you pass on the street has a life as complex as yours. Story 20. The sheer size of the infrastructure of human civilization. Story 21. The benefit of changing your answer in the Monty Hall problem. Story 22. Dream déjà vu. When something happens and you're like, I've seen this before, but it was in a dream from years ago. It's eerie and makes you question if your brain is messing with timelines. Story 23. Cleopatra employed archaeologists to study the ancient pyramids of Giza. Story 24. I do not accept AirDrop or other wireless fidelity file sharing methods. Story 25. A persistent jet stream creates a hexagonal storm at Saturn's North Pole. Story 26. Joe Biden was born closer to Lincoln's second inauguration than to his first. Story 27. Red light therapy sounds like nonsense, but there is more than 20 years of scientific evidence showing that it works. Story 28. The odds of your 7-digit lottery numbers winning are the same as the odds that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 will be drawn. Story 29. We are going to have the first trillionaire before we solve any of the major global issues such as safe drinking water, homelessness, and starvation. Story 30. Before cell phones, I memorized every phone number I needed to know. Friends, neighbors, relatives, and businesses were all stored in my head. I still remember our first phone number, which changed in 1968. Story 31. I still think 10 years ago was the 1980s, not 2016. Story 32. I cannot keep up with the internet, even though I was coding my MySpace page when I was 10. Story 33. Seals are more closely related to weasels than to whales. Woodlice are more closely related to barnacles than to beetles. The platypus. There is a bird that lives in the jungle and eats leaves. Its leaf diet causes it to produce a lot of gas, making it very stinky. When it hatches, it has claws and can move around. If predators approach the nest, the chick can jump into the water, swim until the threat is gone, and then climb back up, using its claws to grip branches. Story 34. Over 60 million people die each year. That is 164,383 people per day, or 6,849 people per hour. Story 35. The whole fabric of reality and the existence of everything and nothing. Story 36. As a disc jockey, real-time stem separation amazes me. If you had told 12-year-old me 30 years ago that I would be able to remove, filter, and apply effects to vocals, instruments, drums, and other elements from any track I owned, I would have freaked. It is simply magic. I do not understand exactly how it works, and I do not care, because it has made mixing and blending tracks much more exciting for me. I feel the same excitement I felt when I first learned to mix 2 tracks on a pair of turntables. Story 37. The moon and the sun appear virtually the same size when seen from Earth. It's a mind-boggling coincidence. Story 38. The fact that a small percentage of people cannot feel pain is mind-blowing to someone living at the opposite end of the scale with a chronic pain disorder. Story 39. One of Bruce Lee's movies contains a scene that mirrors how his son Brandon Lee died. Bruce pretends to be dead after being shot by an assassin on a film set. Brandon Lee died on the set of The Crow after an accidental shooting. Both died during the production of their 5th film. Both became more famous because their deaths occurred during film productions, creating tragic publicity for the films, similar to Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, who by coincidence was the same age as Brandon Lee when he died. Story 40. John Tyler, the 10th president, was born in 1790. One of his grandsons died in 2025, 235 years after his grandfather was born. Story 41. To me, death is unbearable. People die all the time, but I still find it hard to accept. I have lost many family members, yet death does not feel real. When I hear that someone has died, all I can imagine is never seeing them again. But the idea of death itself feels unreal. Story 42. The world is run by criminals. The older you get, the more you sense the depth of it, and the more you realize it is far worse than you imagined every single year. Story 43. A generation of elderly people who had been legally enslaved as children watched the moon landing. Story 44. The United States government is shut down, yet citizens still pay taxes. The money laundering machine must continue regardless. Members of Congress still get paid even when they are in recess and do not perform their duties. Story 45. About 100 days saw between 800,000 and 1 million Rwandans killed in a genocide, many by blades alone. The root cause was that German and Belgian colonists artificially divided the people into 2 groups, and generations later many came to believe that some people were inherently lesser than others. Story 46. Napoleon's grandnephew served as Attorney General of the United States in the Theodore Roosevelt administration. Story 47. Some places are no longer accepting pennies. I understand the concept, but for some reason I never thought I would live to see it. Story 48. As a kid born after 2000, old-school record players blew my mind. I accepted them as magic until I heard how the original designs worked. You sang into the bowl-shaped horn. The metal vibrated, moving a needle that cut indentations and grooves. When the needle later traced those grooves, it vibrated the horn the same way and reproduced the original sound. Story 49. Bananas are berries, but strawberries aren't. Total fruit identity crisis. Story 50. The province of Alberta, Canada, has no rats. It is one of the few places on Earth to have eradicated them. Story 51. Honestly, space is vast. Everywhere humans naturally live is a tiny speck of existence. A small rock we cannot inhabit without significant help. In our solar system alone, an unfathomably massive ball of fire warms our planet and gives it life. It is not the only giant fiery ball. Everything out there is older than ancient, and when we stare at the sky, we are often looking at things long dead. And black holes, what kind of phenomenon is that? Story 52. The human immunodeficiency virus is no longer the grim death sentence it was 25 years ago. Story 53. Supposedly, it is worse for your oral health to brush your teeth immediately after vomiting instead of waiting 15 to 30 minutes. I have been waiting years for this to be debunked, but that is the prevailing information on the internet. The science is that stomach acid temporarily weakens tooth enamel, and brushing too soon can abrade it. Best practice is to rinse with water and baking soda right away to help neutralize the acid, then wait 15 to 30 minutes before brushing. Story 54. Some animals look so strange they seem like they could have been made with artificial intelligence. Long-eared jerboa, a mouse-sized rodent with very large ears and a long tail. It hops like a kangaroo and has short Tyrannosaurus rex-like arms. Cyclocosmia ricketi, also known as the Oreo spider, a trapdoor spider whose abdomen shape and patterning resemble an Oreo cookie or a rusted ancient coin. Maned wolf, a canid that looks like a fox with long, stilt-like legs. Tailless whip scorpion, which looks like a cross between a scorpion and a spider. It is so strange that one was used as a creature in the Harry Potter films. Handfish, small fish that use their pectoral fins to walk along the ocean floor, sometimes clinging to seagrass. Chevrotain, also known as the mouse deer, tiny ungulates that grow to about 1 foot high. Tree kangaroo, a species of kangaroo adapted to living in trees that looks like a cross between a kangaroo, a sloth, and a bear. Fennec fox, a small, sandy-colored fox with oversized ears. Lobster moth caterpillar, whose larvae have adapted to mimic the head and thorax of an ant, complete with 4 legs. Story 55. Speaking from experience, every chronically ill person has a frightening story about a healthcare provider mistreating, abusing, or neglecting them. As chronically ill patients, we see many healthcare providers over our lifetimes. You would think most of those experiences would be good, but they are not. Each time I see someone new, it is a coin flip whether they will be the best provider I could have hoped for or the worst who makes life even harder. Story 56. Christopher Lee, the famous actor, witnessed the last execution by guillotine in 1939. Edit. I cannot use Google to double-check my facts. Thanks for the comments and for one very aggressively angry private message. I hope your life is okay, man. Story 57. In dreams you feel awake and mindful and recognize the patterns, scenery, conversations, and activities, yet you are actually fast asleep. Story 58. I once read a statistic that there are more possible chess games than atoms in the observable universe. Story 59. Racism, xenophobia, and Islamophobia. How can you hate someone or think less of them just because they are different from you? It never made sense to me. Story 60. There are more African American men playing in the National Football League at any given time than working as dental hygienists. Story 61. Car horns can be pressed and they keep sounding. Feels like they should run out of air, but that is not how they work. Story 62. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is married to Cheryl from Curb Your Enthusiasm. Story 63. The universe. It is incomprehensible how big this is and how tiny we are. It doesn't even feel real. When I think about a black hole, a quasar, or a supernova, these phenomena are of such magnitude that I can't comprehend that they are real and actually happening at this very moment. It is all so overwhelming. Story 64. Until the 1980s, infants often did not receive anesthesia for surgical procedures because the medical consensus assumed they were not developed enough to feel pain. Instead, they were sometimes given paralytic drugs without adequate pain relief. Story 65. The United States elected a known pedophile who was impeached twice, incited an insurrection, and is blatantly just an awful person. Story 66. An ancient animal called the alien goldfish, which is its real name, has an organ that no other animal possesses. The organ is called a pharodiscus. Scientists do not know its function, but they have determined it contained a substantial amount of iron. Story 67. Sharks are older than trees. Trump posted an artificial intelligence video of himself carpet bombing poop on No King protesters, and Mike Johnson defended this. Story 68. Humans tried to go to space, develop vaccines, and reimagine society in the middle of the last century and beyond. Now we have whatever this sad civilization has become. Story 69. When you are a child, if you accidentally chop off the tip of a finger, it can grow back completely. It happened to me. I lost the tip of an index finger, including the entire nail, and it grew back. Story 70. Sleep paralysis. You know you are dreaming, but you also know that you cannot move. Story 71. For me, it's Pangea. I understand it's a scientific fact. People far smarter than I have worked out Earth's history. I still can't wrap my head around it. All the world's continents fitting together because they used to be one landmass? Then, over a time my brain cannot fathom, they drifted apart until the world looks the way it does now. It baffles me. It sounds absurd and fake, even though I know it is not. Story 72. Honestly, blobfish are so strange. It's hard to believe they are real. Story 73. A standard 3 by 3 by 3 Rubik's Cube has 43 quintillion 252 quadrillion 3 trillion 274 billion 489 million 856,000 possible combinations. Story 74. The fact that prion exist has always seemed wild to me. They are misfolded protein molecules that, when ingested, inherited, or transmitted by exposure, will slowly kill a person in nearly all cases. They can replicate without a genome and typically cause death within 10 to 15 years after exposure. It is one of the diseases I fear most, to be honest. Story 75. Breathing exercises. I did not realize how little I was breathing. I thought about breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Big belly breaths. Story 76. The net increase in the number of people, births minus deaths, is about 200,000 every day. Story 77. If you have any 6 people, there will be at least 3 who are mutual friends or 3 who are mutual strangers. If you have 23 people, there is a 50% chance that at least 2 share the same birthday. Hedgehogs. I mean, seriously? Story 78. Folding a sheet of A4 paper 42 times would theoretically make it thick enough to reach the moon. Story 79. A light year is 9.46 trillion kilometers. The closest exoplanet, Kepler 22b, which might be similar to our planet, is 620 light-years away. It is essentially impossible to imagine this distance, let alone travel it. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Parker Solar Probe, which travels at 194 kilometers per second, would still take about 958,000 years. Story 80. This guy. Story 81. Percentages are reversible. It blew my mind. 25% of 50 equals 50% of 25. Story 82. Helicopters. Their blades spin fast, and suddenly they can make the aircraft go up, down, forward, and backward. It's just not right. Story 83. My mom occasionally talks about how insane photographs are. Nobody thinks about it, but you are literally capturing a moment in time that will never exist again. Story 84. The #1 predator of Canadian moose is the killer whale. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.